So this particular soap is not one of the last that I designed, but the almost last that I made in the 12 months of soap pack. And the reason for that is it has a crap ton of shamrocks in it, and they're all individually poured at like half an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch thick. And I didn't want to make them because I don't have to make them for just this one batch, right? I have to make them for all of the soaps that I make for this, even though I just show you this one little batch. And I knew that that was going to take forever and I didn't want to. And so I put it off until the 11th bar in this line, even though this is the 4th bar in the line. Are you with me? Am I making sense? We're making the March soap today, and there's shamrocks in it, and I will tell you more about it in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for day 156 of 365 days of soap. And today, as I said, we're making the March bar. And also, as I said, there's a lot of shamrocks in it, which is fun. But, you know, it's harder to do it this way. And I had already done so for the January soap and made all the little individual branches, and those took quite a while too. So this, I guess, arguably didn't take as long as making the little branches, but it was still a pain. And so I did put it off for a while. And as a result, this was the second to last soap that I made in the entire line. But it ended up very, very beautiful, and I'm very, very proud of all the things that I did. So let's go to the video and talk about it there, and I can ooh and ah over my own handiwork, really. Okay, it is the March bar, and as I said, this was the 11th bar that I made in the set because well, you're going to find out why. See that? That's the design. And we're using Tall Dark Enhansive, Maniacal Pea, Snake, something, all from Mad Micas, and I think Mint Julep for the third. But oh, I'm going to show it to you here. Look how oversharing I am with all of these videos. But the shamrock in the middle, Andy the Money is what else we used. All right, and this whole thing is scented with a mix of mint and juniper. And the reason is because I love a nice sweet mint with a biting juniper. It's a delicious, lovely blend. And also, it was time to put a more herbaceous type scent into the 12 months of soap line, really. So that's what we're doing. Back to that damn shamrock and why this was the 11th bar that I made in the whole set. Well, I mean, you already have some indication as to why that is, right? I guess not much though, because January's little embeds took forever to make. Forever. I had one little individual mold that was supposed to be a feather, and so I would pour into that, cut the feather in half, and then continue to do that until I had enough. And it's only about maybe, I don't know, a quarter of an inch thick. And so you can imagine how many times I had to continue pouring into that thing. It sucked. Was not fun. February's embed, not bad, right? That's just done with a silicone embed or a silicone column mold. And you just pour it in and then, get the thing out and you're good to go. For this particular one, for the shamrocks, I already had a mold, like a Wilton candy mold for the little shamrock. And they were all individual, so I could make, I don't know, I think 12 at a time. And they were all about 1/4 of an inch deep. So I knew it was going to take a while. And so when I was looking at it, I went, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to move on to April. And then I ended up moving on to, well, other soaps in the line that did not require embeds. And when it was all said and done, I had done everything except for March and December. And I had to bite the bullet and finally make the March bar because I needed, Mr. Soap and Clay to be able to look at all of them together because he needed to help me with December. But that's for December talk. Let's go ahead and start the pour of this guy and talk about, the design and other things. Okay, and on to the pour. And as you can see, I took the stick blender out and thickened up this base layer because I don't want to spend all day waiting for all of these things to thicken up on their own so I can pour, because this base layer actually has to be reasonably firm pretty fast because I am going to need to put this on an angle because we're working on them angles today to do, the greens. And I thought I had put coffee in the bottom layer, but it appears I did not. I know I super thought about putting coffee in. I wonder why I didn't. I guess the most obvious reason why I didn't would be because the coffee smell tends to overpower a lot of things. And since we are dealing with a juniper and a mint, I definitely wanted it to be nice and clean smelling. And that sexy stranger on a train will darken up pretty considerably. I love these freaking Mad Mica colors things. I'm actually surprised that I haven't been bringing the board out for this and picking off the board, because that's literally, what we do for everything when we're looking at how we're going to design a bath bomb or a soap or whatever. We have the pegboard and we look at all the colors that are available. Except I always end up going, whenever I need a black for a mica dip or something, I always end up going to Macy Gray, and Mad Mica stopped making that. So they told me. And so that sucks. So, whatever. Now, for this next layer, this all becomes a really weird tightrope walk at this point, right? Because, well, the bottom layer needs to be firm enough for me to get onto an angle so I can pour the first green layer. And I would like the first green layer to thicken up reasonably quickly so I can flip it and then flip the angle and then pour the next green layer. But I want it fluid enough that I can easily get it into the mold by just pouring it on the wall. So doing a wall pour, right? A wall pour for maybe a new soaper that hasn't heard me talk about wall pours a million times is exactly what it sounds like. You basically just put the nozzle of the Pyrex on the lip of the wall there, and you, in sort of even motions, run the length of the mold, putting the soap batter in until it's all in. You get it. And this one definitely needed more color. And looking at the finished bar, I am glad that I put it in, because essentially I did want 3 very distinct different colors of green in all of this. Why? Because it's fun. It's the only reason. Also, that soap in the mold has firmed up nicely. Taking a stick blender to it worked. If I were to take a stick blender to this, actually, I don't remember if I did take a stick blender to this, so maybe I do. But you see how adding the scent in really extended the fluidity of that batter, which is delightful. And I am always here for that. But it is thick enough for it to hopefully get firmed up in the mold fast so I can flip that angle and put the other green on. And as we can see, nothing in the brown is moving. And yes, I know my camera has been bouncing for months since I started this new setup. The reason for that is Mr. Soap and Clay was going to hang my actual camera harness from the ceiling, and he has not had time to do so because he is focused on way more important things, and those things are called, my house and making sure that it's, moving along, because it's a huge project, you guys. I am forever constantly covered in drywall mud right now, by the way, because it's a huge project. And I really am not super good at the pulling of electrical and doing of any of that. Like, I can't do that stuff. But once the walls go up, I then have to do the drywall because I wouldn't say that I'm good at it, but Mr. Soap and Clay has literally no patience for it. And so I can basically do that. Like, that's something that is reasonably okay for me to do. I just put a podcast on and, do the drywall thing and then do the taping and the mudding. And the thing that I hate the most is the sanding. Like, that's awful. So I've been working on perfecting my taping and mudding skills, so sanding is never required. You want to guess how far I've gotten in that? Spoiler, not far. It's actually almost impossible to tape and mud without sanding. And that sucks. But, I'm doing like actual new construction right now instead of actually trying to tape and mud and sand or whatever in an existing room that I don't want to, get stuff in the crevices or in the carpet or whatever. Also, we're losing all of our carpet soon, and I'm so excited about that because I hate carpet, especially when you have animals. Just carpet and animals, it's a terrible idea, and it's much easier to just work with hardwoods. So I'm looking forward to that. And look at that. That set up beautifully in the mold there as well. Gave me enough time to fix the green for the final angle, really. And again, because that scent does sort of extend the batter and the fluidity, it's still thin enough for me to pour into the mold instead of, clumping it in and having to worry about air pockets. So this is going great just across the board. And it might seem like, best pour ever, none problems to be had. Everything is just the most amazing thing in the world. But you have to remember, guys, there's still there's two more things that have to be done in here. One of those things is, obviously that white layer that's left over. But the second thing is the freaking shamrocks. That sucks. And so whether or not this is super firm, the green, it doesn't really matter at this point, because if it moves a bit when I put it down on the mold down on its bottom, that's okay. It will still give the effect and the angles that I'm going for. So I want to put down a little bit of white, which is getting very thick, which is actually good right now. It's not so thick that I have to really plop anything in, but it is thick enough that it will hold all of these freaking shamrocks. See that? See how thin they are? I'm gonna put these in individually. This is my life. And so I sped it up pretty fast. This is going at, I don't know, 200 times speed just to get it in. And honestly, I could have sped it up even more, because even watching this and seeing this again, oh yeah, I did this thing. This is not great. It's, it's tedious, and it's sort of triggering the tedium again with all of that. If you don't already have, because here's the thing, I hate buying new molds. I do not like it. I often tell you guys not to do it. But if you wanted to do a design like this, I would recommend first and foremost looking online and seeing if they just sell a silicone shamrock, like a column mold, kind of like the heart that we did yesterday. And by kind of, I mean exactly like the freaking heart that we did yesterday. Because I have to imagine it has been done. I mean, there are stars and hearts and butterflies. There are all manner of weird silicone column molds these days to do these embeds. So if you can find, and you don't already have, a Wilton candy mold that creates these guys, then get that, because it's going to make your project a lot easier. For me, I already had the shamrocks for a different project and decided to use that. And so again, all goes back to the aforementioned, this was one of the last bars that I finished. Now, one of the problems with this right now is I actually am working against the clock, because the longer it takes me to get all of the shamrocks in, the thicker the soap batter that's currently still on the Pyrex is going to get. And there is not a lot of room between these shamrocks and the far, wall. And I do need soap in there. I definitely need soap to exist alongside of that, because I don't want these shamrocks to fall out. It's a melt and pour embed inside cold process. I really do actually want it completely encapsulated. A, for the design, but 2, so I don't have to worry about them falling out during the cut or during the cure, which can definitely happen. I have had questions asked to me actually about the melt and pour embeds and how it affects cure. The embeds themselves do not, but as bars continue to lose water weight, right, they shrink, and the melt and pour will not shrink. And so ultimately what you are getting with all soaps that have these embeds like this, after all of the water weight has been lost from the cold process side, is the embeds tend to stick out. And you can run them through your planer, your beveler, your planer if you want, or you cannot. And you can just leave them. I choose to just leave them. And because I think it's actually kind of cool that there's some raised bits. It's kind of like a textured wall. Going back to the drywalling thing, I don't do textured walls. I do 100% smooth walls, which is why my taping and mudding needs to be on point at all times, because I hate textured walls, but I love textured soap. Make that make sense. I can't make it make sense, so I doubt you can. Now, with this, the batter's, it's kind of thickish, but it's actually fluid enough that I was able just to put some pieces there against the side wall and then just use my spatula to kind of smoosh it down alongside those shamrocks. And so at the end of the day, none of this was terrible, right? Like, it wasn't bad. It was kind of a long pour. And all the rest of the bars that I have to make for this, well, I have done at this point. It was long. But for the 12 months of soap, unlike with all things that you make, it's all about balance. And I've been, trying to teach the new soap apprentices about that too, because they come to me with new crazy wild ideas for this, that, or the other. And I'm like, do you know how long it takes to do this thing? So if you can have this thing, but if you have this thing, you're going to have to sacrifice another thing in the line that's, and make it easier than you were initially planning. Because if every single, bath bomb batch that you make takes you 4 hours, well, there's no good ROI at that point. We're not, So if 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, if, wow, look at that, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. If a percentage of my line is complicated, but the rest of them are really easy peasy to pour, then that's fine. That's great. So as long as I am designing the entire line so it ultimately all still evens out to about the same amount of time spent on each bar, then that's deals. That's a great way to really make sure that you're going to get a good ROI on the time that you put into this. But this actually will get C-popped and gelled. I'm not afraid of the embeds inside melting. And so let's go on to the cut and check out these soaps. Okay, and on to the cut of this bad boy, which is so bright and clean smelling, very herbaceous, very cold, very awesome. And all of the colors are represented, so that's fun. It's going to be great. I'm hoping that there is actually a shamrock on both sides of these soaps. Oh, and there is. And isn't that cute? I love that. So it's like there's the dirt and there are some hills and then there's the shamrock on top. Isn't that awesome? I think that's a good thing for March. That's a great bar for March. And it's still rather simplistic, you know. I didn't want to go too over the top with any of these. Oh God, you are going to hear me say I didn't want to go too over the top with any of these soaps. And I have a suspicion that you're going to just be laughing at me the entire time. You know, Mrs. Soap and Clay wanted to make it a simple design. Also, Mrs. Soap and Clay, let's do some weird shit that takes 17,000 hours longer than is necessary on any batch of soap. Because it happened for this one already, happened for the January one. But the design in of itself, looking at both of those, still rather simplistic. It's stunning and it's simple. It's not big swirls. It's not big craziness with really ostentatious colors and all of the things. So, but that's definitely cute. And it's a very fitting bar for March. Why? Because St. Patrick's Day is in March. It's really the whole reason. That, and I wanted a brighter green in the line after the one from January, which was supposed to go blue, went green, but went like still a very cold green. Also, by the way, to that, at the end of Cure, because I'm looking at the January bar too, it went closer to blue. So that's cool. It all mellowed out. I love that for me. And I also really love these soaps. Like, those are very, very cute soaps. Look at that. None problems with any of them. The lines are good for the angled layers. The bottom layer is good. And the shamrock is exactly perfectly where I wanted it. And no worries about it falling out of the side. And all of the shamrocks are shown on both sides of the bar. So, I mean, we're winning all around with that, right? So that is the March soap, the third in the 12 months of soap line. Smells of mint and juniper. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm glad that I'm done with this one. That is day 156. And there it is, the March soap. And wow, isn't that pretty? I am so proud of this bar. It ended up, all of the hard work and everything to go into those little shamrocks, which again, that's not really hard work. It just took a long time. But it totally paid off. And the cuts were all perfect. There wasn't any real dead space. So the actual shamrock showed on both sides of all bars. So that's amazing. I'm super duper happy with it. I love the little diagonal length. All of it's so good. And I love this, and it's a really pretty addition to this line for sure. And so for that, yay me. I'm allowed to pat myself on the back sometimes, and you should do the same when you've done something awesome in your life. If you are interested in this March soap, you can get it in the 12 months of soap pack that will be released at the end of this line. But I do recommend going ahead and subscribing and going and joining the newsletter and doing all the things, because for one of the days of 10 days of thanks, which is coming up quickly, I will be giving away 10 of these 12 months of soap packs. So lots of numbers, lots of confusing, all of the awesome. For those of you who are subscribed, hey, Sudzers, thank you. I hope you've gone over and signed up for the newsletter so you don't miss out on when I drop the 10 freebies every day during 10 days of thanks. I hope you guys had a good time today. I certainly did. I'm out of here for today, but I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.